So let's talk about emerging markets. For any business out there, they represent one of the biggest growth opportunities today. I mean, the upside is just incredible. But here's the catch. The reality on the ground is messy. It's treacherous. It can sink even the smartest, most prepared companies out there. And this isn't just bad luck. The challenges are structural. So the real question is, how do you actually navigate this landscape and survive?
And this quote, wow, it just sets the stage perfectly, doesn't it? We're not talking about abstract academic theory here. This is a practical guide to survival. We're moving from understanding why the ocean is so wild and unpredictable to learning how you can stay afloat when you finally decide to jump in. And this really gets to the heart of the tension every single global business faces. On one side, you've got this immense promise of growth, right? But on the other, you have a chaotic reality that just doesn't play by the rules you're used to. And the key thing to get is that this chaos isn't random. It's actually built into the very system you're trying to enter.
Okay, so if the chaos is structural, how in the world do you manage it? Well, you need a map. You need a reliable tool to help you chart a course. Just showing up and winging it, that is an absolute recipe for disaster. What you really need is a framework, a way to think clearly and systematically about all the risks you're about to face.
Look, it's really this simple. Trying to expand into these markets without a solid framework is basically just sending an open invitation for chaos to come in and wreck your plans. And that's not just some catchy phrase, it's an operational reality that leads directly to failure, to confusion, and to some incredibly costly mistakes. And here is that tool. It's a simple 4-bucket typology to help us categorize every threat you'll face. You know, the power of this approach is in its discipline. Instead of just this vague, anxious feeling of risk, it forces us to break it all down into 4 distinct pillars: political, cross-cultural, currency, and commercial. Getting that clarity is your absolute first line of defense.
All right, let's dive into our first pillar, the political climate. The moment you expand globally, you're not in Kansas anymore. You're operating inside another country's system of power, their rules, their laws. You're a guest in their house, and that's the very heart of political risk.
So what does that actually mean? Well, the crucial point is this. Political risk is your exposure to financial loss that comes directly from the government or the legal system of the country you're operating in. It's the risk that, hey, the rules of the game can change overnight and you don't get a vote.
And to see how real this can get, just listen to this story. In 2015, a new pro-investment government in Myanmar sent all the right signals. A business was set up under these great new laws. But then, in 2021, a military coup brought everything to a screeching halt, literally overnight. And today, those assets are just sitting there, a sunk cost, waiting for a stability that might never come back. That is what political risk looks like in the real world.
But you know, it isn't always as dramatic as a full-blown coup. More often, political risk is like a death by 1,000 cuts. It shows up as this constant regulatory friction that just bleeds your business dry. Things like sudden new taxes, unexpected limits on foreign ownership, endless delays in getting licenses, or just unpredictable law enforcement. These aren't abstract ideas. They are direct hits to your operations and your bottom line.
Okay, let's move on to our second pillar, because this is where things start to get even more complex. This one is all about the invisible barriers, the risks that don't show up on any legal document or financial statement, but can be every bit as devastating. We're talking about cross-cultural risk, and this one often feels like a mystery failure. You know, the numbers just aren't working, your marketing campaigns are falling flat, your partnerships feel strained, and you just can't seem to build trust. Why? Because culture influences everything. What's considered persuasive, what's respectful, even what a simple yes actually means. And this reveals a critical domino effect. It's not the cultural differences themselves that kill a project. No, it's the miscommunication that they cause. That miscommunication leads to wrong assumptions, which then produce a bad strategy. And that bad strategy ultimately damages your local relationships, making everything slower, more expensive, and way more frustrating.
Okay, let's tackle our final 2 pillars together. These shift our focus to 2 huge areas: financial volatility and, well, our own internal mistakes.
First up is currency risk, your exposure to those wild economic swings. And here's the hard truth. The currency markets do not care how brilliant your strategy is. A sudden shift in exchange rates can literally vaporize your profit margins overnight.
So this risk usually pops up in 3 main ways. There's transaction exposure. That's when you're buying or selling in different currencies and the rates move on you.
There's translation exposure, which messes with your financial reports when you convert everything back to your home currency. And then there's economic exposure, which is when currency shifts fundamentally change how competitive you are in a market.
And finally, we have commercial risk. And this is the pillar where management has absolutely nowhere to hide. It's about losses that come from your own poor strategy, your own weak execution, or your own operational failures. You can't blame the government, you can't blame the culture, this one is on you.
This quote just cuts right to the heart of commercial risk, doesn't it? So many companies fail abroad, not because the market was just too tough, but because they were overconfident. They just assumed that what worked at home would work anywhere, and they ended up exporting their arrogance instead of adapting their skills.
And this visualizes the core problem perfectly. It's the classic square peg in a round hole situation. Your strategy, perfectly designed for your home market, is that square peg. The local environment, the reality of the new market, is the round hole. And when you try to force a fit without adapting, all you get is friction, backlash, and ultimately, failure.
Okay, so we've looked at all 4 pillars. Now, how do we pull this all together? Because the goal isn't just to identify a bunch of risks, it's to build a resilient global strategy, one that can actually withstand shocks coming from any direction.
And this is maybe the most crucial insight of all. These pillars don't exist in isolation, they are deeply interconnected. A political crisis can trigger a currency collapse. A cross-cultural blunder can blow up into a media disaster, which then attracts regulatory scrutiny. The real skill here is seeing the complete picture of risk, not just a few of the isolated parts.
So how do you make this practical? You use this tool. For any country you're even thinking about, create a simple one-page risk map like this. Identify the top couple of risks for each pillar and, this is the most important part, assign an owner who is responsible for mitigating that risk. This simple act transforms risk from some vague worry into a manageable, accountable task. It's a game changer.
So let's end with your actionable takeaway. Here is a 5-step process you can use to apply this entire framework. First, be crystal clear on your goal. Second, diagnose all the risks across all 4 pillars. Third, choose mitigations that are actually realistic for your company. Fourth, let that risk assessment guide your entry strategy. And finally, number 5, monitor continuously, because this risk landscape is always changing.
If you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be this. Global expansion fails when risk is treated like a footnote at the end of a plan. It is not a footnote. Risk is the operating system. It's the fundamental environment that you're working in, and learning to navigate it, well, that's simply the price of admission.